Welcome this morning. It is January 16th, 2022 for you people that are in the future watching this. And I was not prepared to do a show this morning, but it doesn't matter. I usually shoot from the hip anyway, man. But today was going to be a day where I was going to go kayaking. I've had it planned for a little while. Work has had me do oh God, what is it, like a 13-hour circle across Virginia. Been able to stop at an Ollie's, picked up one or two little things. And of course, this morning, I couldn't. We had the epic snowstorm they've been predicting for the last couple of days. We had snow last week, and it was enough to make you just be done with winter. Work got caught off early, and then the next day they called off work altogether. And right when I started preparing for this stream, it started coming down outside. And so usually I say Sundays, rainy Sundays in particular, are comic book day, because as a kid, that is when I would grab a stack of comic books and jump on my bed and spend the rainy morning or afternoon just reading comics as a kid. So now we're doing snow today. Good enough, right? Kayaking would have been great, man. I was really looking forward to that. But anyway, got to let it go. So glad you could join me. Hope you stay safe from the snow. And let's see if we can find some comic books to talk about. If you are planning on keeping this stream to watch later, if you pop in and out and stuff, the title's going to change when I find out what we're talking about and stuff, right? So one of the things about my channel is that if I'm not talking about old comics or showing you a haul that I got on the cheap and things like that, I'm always out for a bargain, always out there looking at Ollie's and flea markets, yard sales, dollar bins, trying to find those little gems. And when I say gems, I don't just mean keys and stuff. I'm talking about great stories or filler issues or great little things that I like. Sometimes that pays off. That pays off quite a bit. Hey, what's up? Let's say hello to everybody. We have John here, as always, and I guarantee John hits that bell to know when I'm coming. I'm going to block a bot. And we got the great and powerful C. Woodward 19. Go check him out. So we can get him on here. There we go. Check out his channel, right? But a lot of the things that I talk about is sometimes I'm a little bit reactionary, and and I'll go on a rant every now and then. I'm human, or I'll talk about this and I'll talk about that. But we live in a world where I think a big problem with a lot of things that are going on in comics that reflect the real world and things like that is that we can no longer drink from the skulls of our enemies, which makes way for a lot of assery to go on, if you will, right? But I'm not going to review news. I'm not going to review Batgirl. I might talk about Peacemaker, man, but there's so much negative stuff that does not matter, that nobody really cares about. I mean, that it's kind of hard to get on here and be like, let's talk comics. What's going on? What's doing there, man? There's an integrity that has been lost. There's a purity that has been lost. The comic for the comic's sake, writing for the heroes and stuff like that, right? So what ends up happening is that I think that's why the back issue market has blown up. I've always said it is, and thank goodness for YouTube, because if I really went digging for the video, or any longtime viewers, they'll know that I've been saying this for years, is that even if comic books, let's say for whatever reason, Marvel, DC go out tomorrow, it's over with, they're done. The superhero movies and TV shows no longer get what they were getting, the billion-dollar movies and stuff, and they decide that it's time to move on, and they just shut them down. The hobby itself is going to survive, so because there's so much great stuff to dig through and to find and to play around with. And if you love this stuff, you love this stuff. You don't really need new comics coming out if you really love comics, because I mean, we're going on oh my God, well over 80 years of comics you can back up and look at, trades, paperbacks, all that stuff, right? Maybe they'll dry up one day, but who knows? But things online and having friends and getting into this stuff, right? So some of the things that pay off when you just love your comic books and you're kind of a completist and you're into the story, every now and then, man, you have some gems, right? So with all the speculation going on, what I've started doing is when I can stomach it, I'll kind of see what the hot books are in these top tens on these channels, right? If you're into that stuff, fine, whatever, your money, whatever, right? It's not going to hold up. So what I'm doing is I'm seeing what everybody is going for, and then I'll get curious about the things that nobody is looking for. And you can get those on the cheap if you're really out to get keys and stuff, right? And I really haven't picked up too many things like that, but that's how I used to work. When the Batman movie came out in 1989, the Tim Burton Batman movie, Todd McFarlane ended up buying the first appearance of Superman relatively on the cheap for it being the first appearance of Superman, because everybody was Batman crazy. So that's kind of the trick I'm doing here, right? Everybody's going crazy over a new Wookiee in a Darth Vader comic book and all this stuff because of the Book of Boba Fett, that people are like bashing, but by gosh, they'll go after these comics and stuff. Well, while they're looking there, I'm going to be looking over here, and I'm not going to announce some of the keys I am looking for on the cheap now, because as much as I love you guys, I know I may end up having some competition, and not meaning to. But over the years, when I went to complete runs or I just picked up things I love, and I was like checking out some of these keys and looking, I inadvertently found out that I have two books, and there's more, I'm just not going to dig through them, that have like jumped up to $120 a piece worth if you're really into the speculating part. Part of this came from watching a live stream on Sleepy Reader's channel last weekend where they started talking about Alan Moore's Promethea. And I started on my CLZ app, seeing if I had all the issues, which I did. I knew I did. And the last two issues were really hard to find, but I found them in dollar bins. The last two issues are actually, well, the last issue, you actually have to take apart the comic and arrange the unfolded pages to be able to read the story. You can read it in several different ways. So back then, when that book came out, the last issue, everybody bought two when they figured out they had to go ahead and take it apart. One mint, one they can read the story, right? So I started looking up how much that book was worth, and I found out that one of the issues that I have here has jumped up to $120 that I found in a dollar bin. I think I found this at a convention of all places and stuff, right? So lo and behold, when everybody's going after keys and stuff and speculation, I've got stuff in my collection that I bought just because I loved and wanted it, and it's paying off. That stuff's important to you. Now I can act like, and deep down, I'm like, it's still a comic. I'll just read this thing, treat it like a comic as it should be. But I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to sit here and tell you that I'm no longer going to be unbagging this bad boy. So, no, we're not going to take the chance. Just the fact that I have a little cappuccino in the skull of my enemies, my enemy's skull here, stuff like that. I'm not taking the chance. Just the fact that I brought it out to show you guys just shows how much I love you. All right. So yeah, $120. And then this one, and it's really wild how the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles seem to come up every now and then, and I actually get a specific question asked to me sometimes and stuff. I think they're more curious about the Turtles than what I think, which is fine. It ought to be. But my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course, they came out in like 84, and it took a while for it to pick up. It was a little indie book with a low print run, but they started gaining steam. People started, word of mouth spread out about these turtle books. And then you could look in your comics, and you'd have like Mile High Comics and Lone Star Comics, whatever they're called back then. And you go back and look in your comics from the Copper Age and from the Bronze Age a little bit stuff, but there was catalogs for companies that sold back issues. And that's where you got a lot of buzz if you weren't reading things like Comic Scene and stuff, right? So I found the Turtles, mid to late 80s. And they were so different that I didn't take them serious. I was like, oh, geez, little cartoon turtles coming around. And then you read the material, and it was dark, and it was bloody. It had stakes, and there was death. And there's a little bit of humor, and they lightened the tone up over time. Heavily influenced by Jack Kirby, heavily influenced by Frank Miller. So I ended up loving it. They won me over through story and technique and seeing these influences and things that were going on. So my Turtles go from like 1986, all the back issues and stuff. I can pull down my Turtle trades here of the series here somewhere. I've done that on a live stream. I'm still figuring out where all my stuff is on my shelves where I've done them. So, yeah, my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are from the late 80s. There's Donatello with the Jack Kirby story, all the way through, I guess, 92 when they had the City at War storyline. That's my era of Turtles. Okay, I'm fine with that. That's my little bubble of Turtles. Okay, so I love this stuff, right? And I'll pick up stuff by Kevin Eastman and stuff and Peter Laird if I see it out there, But I have my little trades. I got to get the fourth one at some point. They're selling that thing for $60 and up when the thing is worth like $12. But there's a fourth trade of that original Turtle stuff. And then, of course, right when I sort of started getting out of the Turtles, I came out with Archie Comics Turtle Adventures. And some of those were kind of pricey, whatever. But out of my love of just picking up the Turtles, not really worrying about condition and going nuts or anything like that, I ended up finding these in dollar bins. And this particular issue, number 47, has jumped up to $120 because supposedly it's the first appearance of Space Usagi. And I'm really hoping we don't find out it's something lame like an advertisement. You know what I mean? Or you want to watch the movie, or is the trailer going to be enough? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, for $1 a piece over the years, just picking this stuff because I love the Turtles. I've got some pricey books here now, $120, just for buying something out of a dollar bin, reading it, enjoying it, and then putting it with its friends, its turtle family, if you will. Right? That's the fun of the comics, man. Sometimes just getting things because you love them and you enjoy them and you like them pays off on its own. All right. And C. Woodward here, right? Now, there's a guy that loves his turtles, right? I pretty much just automatically pick up turtles as soon as I've seen them at this point. Yeah. I mean, I know they've been taken off in price, but I've seen the turtles ebb and flow and go. But a lot of people don't realize is in the 90s, it was actually a good cleansing, in my opinion, right? The turtles were dead. They sold them to Eric Larson. He did this experimental story. Let's put it that way. We'll stay a little bit positive. This little experimental storyline where he took all the turtles and they all looked alike. And he found ways to rape, pillage, and just put the turtles through hell. And they each ended up having a separate identity. They even turned one into a cyborg and stuff, right? So the turtles have ebbed and flowed and waned. But what I like about that is that the true fans stick around. And then you have like this cleansing of like scraping barnacles off of your boat of people who move on and stuff, right? So I like the real fan base of the Turtles and stuff, right? Turtles is one of those things where I can listen to people all the time. People love that IDW series. There's always something turtle people like. There's only been one cartoon series I actually liked of the Turtles, and it was in the early 2000s on Fox. And they adapted that Donatello story where he met Jack Kirby. Okay. It was a tribute to the king. You know what I'm saying? Oh, look at this. Great. Man, I've stalled long enough. We got some stars coming in. You all are stars. Great Legend shows here, man. There's the man, OG, right there. Comic Crack. All right. What's up, brother? I just mentioned y'all's show where you were talking about Prometheus for a minute. And I hate that, got the $120 book here, Promethea. I would love to talk a little bit more about that. And I've shown off some turtle stuff. $120 book, things that I bought for $1 a piece. All right, man. Good to see everybody, right? So in my travels of like loving the comics and keeping this going and the snowstorm going on outside and having to chill out yesterday and everything like that, I've actually got back into reading. Actually, I've gotten to read, which is just fantastic, right? Uh-oh. Computer's trying to restart. But anyway. But I've actually been able to sit down and just read. Today I was going to go kayaking. The snowstorm that has just hit around right before I started the stream has knocked this out. So I want to work around the house a little bit. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to be finishing some reading, right? And one of the things that I picked up on my journeys through work was at an Ollie's in Winchester, Virginia, when I went out to get dinner. There was an Ollie's on the way, and I stop at it quite often. And this is a $50 book. It has held its value, if you're into that, as $50, right? And there are 4 of these, but these are the annotated Sandman by Neil Gaiman. This is book 3. All right. This covers issues 40 to 56 and a special and a little one shot and all this stuff. Right. And these are cool for the trivia, but I think I just want book 2 where they cover Seasons of the Mist, where they shut hell down. Sandman was going to go after Lucifer to make him release a lover that he put in there 10,000 years ago and stuff because she smited him. Didn't want to be his lover and all this stuff. But I think that would be good. But they got this this guy here, and I apologize for not knowing his name, but his name apparently is Leslie Klinger. And apparently he made waves in the literary field for doing annotated versions of Dracula and Sherlock Holmes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically they have reprinted these books in black and white in here. It's a big, heavy book. And you see the comic there. These are the actual comics. They're in black and white. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's amazing to me how I have a full set of Neil Gaiman Sandman. I have hardbacks and trades and everything, and it just blows my mind how they keep finding ways to get me to buy the same books. And then he'll put in trivia in there, historical trivia or references to other literature or just whatever, maybe a little bit of comic book trivia. And I think it's kind of thin for everything that Neil Gaiman packs in there from myth and fables and other stuff. What people don't realize is that it's like a lot of the Sandman concepts and characters that are in there are pulled from old horror comics. He pulls stuff from myth and legend. Everything is in there, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. And then you turn around and you have like, the mythology of Rome and everything in there, the Hectai. He pulls in a lot of stuff. It's like he took everything that he loved and was interested in, threw it in there, even throws a little rock and roll in there, here and there. And it's one great big huge story. So I think it's sort of thin, but it's also sort of fun. And then it's also one of those things where I've read Sandman since about 88, if you will. And some of the trivia I may already know. That may be the problem of it, where you read and reread something and delve into it and you love it and you get into it. Something like this comes in there and you can't really judge if it's good or not because it's not really helping you. You know what I mean? There might be one thing in there, but it does. I love having the annotated version. They did have one thing in there that was very cool. But I think it's issue 53. Mike Allred came on of Madman fame. And they took an old, the same guy that created Superman, helped create Superman, created a character in the early 70s named Prez. And with Prez, it was the idea of a young 18-year-old hippie, more or less, becoming president at 18. And it lasted 4 or 5 issues. So he brought that in here in World's End. And it's one of my favorite stories, man, because like it takes politics and tells it like it's a religious text. The coming of Prez, how he changed the world. And I went straight in there and started reading this one. Now, this was actually interesting. Okay. This was actually interesting because they pointed out one thing that I had never picked up on. They actually have a panel from Prez right there. That is a tribute to the first issue. So they have a panel in there that Mike Allred took straight from the first issue cover of Prez. I like how graceful that was for that thing, right? So cool book. I do kind of recommend it because I paid $12.99 for this, and it's a $50 book, and they do hold their $50 value. Who knows who's going to get that in the future, right? So if you're into Sandman, you're a completist, or you want to get in there and do the trivia, I do recommend it. If you can get it on the cheap, I don't think it's worth $50. I'm going to be looking for the second volume because of Seasons of the Mist and everything that is packed in that storyline. I want to see the annotation. I want to see it annotated to where if there's things about the mythology and all the characters that come in there, that see where they go with it. I'm about to learn, guys. All right. Comic Crack is telling me to sell. And the Gray Man is here. Great. Fantastic. And yeah, Legend, I'm not going to be going out today. I might go out and do a little shoveling if it gets too bad, but we'll see. We'll see what's going on. Got a few things in the house to do, right? So one of the things I did is I was talking about books that are actually worth reading. And that's what makes it really hard over the last 5, 7, 10 years or whatever with comics is that I grew up in that age where I would love for people just to get a whole bunch of books from like 1983. get you a stack of comics, Marvel and DC from 1983. And there are books that I freaking love and I still have. Atari Force, Captain Carrot, All-Star Squadron, Daredevil, Avengers, things like that. There were some great books. That's not what I'm saying. Teen Titans, X-Men were super hot. But you read those books and then you read and you get the mindset. You see the quality of story, if you will. What's the word I'm looking for? They had a lot of subplots. They had a lot of characterization and action. You appreciated the art, and you were slowly starting to see people sort of expand and change with the times and stuff, right? But they weren't very complicated stories, innovative stories and stuff, right? And then all of a sudden you had Alan Moore come in, and then you had Frank Miller's Ronin come in. These guys weren't like superstars right off the bat. Frank Miller had a following because of what he was doing on Daredevil, but it was more the character of Elektra that people loved and the things he was doing there. Electrified. Frank Miller basically brought sex into comics, is what he did. And then you had this guy, Alan Moore, coming in, and slowly, he was not a big superstar right off the bat, man, but he slowly took over. He took over Swamp Thing, and word of mouth started growing. And then people were writing articles and like in Comic Scene and Amazing Heroes or whatever was around back then. I think it was Amazing Heroes and stuff, right? So you sort of got the rise and you started hearing about these things before you actually read them. You started seeing ads and articles, Eagle Awards, vote for the best comic. And then you were seeing who were winning these comics, winning these awards. And it was like Teen Titans and Swamp Thing and Best New White, Alan Moore and things like that. And so the buzz was growing. At least from my perspective, no comic book shop, little guy, little 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old dude jumping off the bus and getting comics and stuff. And I can look back on it now, and I saw comics rise, and they started gaining a respect and had people talking about them. And then there was the talks about like that stigma of comics, like this isn't real literature. And then you can hand them something like Watchmen. But before that, what we kind of forget, and this is totally from a comic book collector reader perspective, okay? I don't know what was going on in Alan Moore's head. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I don't know. Don't care. But from my perspective of looking at these books of things like Miracleman, the big one, before we get to Watchmen, but the quality of storytelling was going up. They were becoming complex. Okay. There was foreshadowing. There were literary tools being used, like theme, okay. I mean, like just the basics and stuff. Right. And you also got to understand, I was reading things like A Wrinkle in Time. I was reading Michael Moorcock. I was starting to read Philip Jose Farmer. I was reading Remo Williams stories, The Destroyer. I was reading a little bit of Mark Twain. I was actually reading actual literature, if you will, but always getting those comics and crawling on the bed on a rainy Sunday with a stack of books, always running to that comic book to the spinner racks when I jumped off the bus to the drugstore in Magimar. It was that we're here. You see what's with me here, right? But it was like expanding and growing, and crisis was going on. There was a lot going on. It was just a fantastic time and era to be collecting. You didn't know what was coming next. There was an unpredictability to it. And then we revisit to Marvel. There's a whole story. I'm not going to go through it, man. But Marvel ended up coming up with Miracleman from Eclipse Comics that Alan Moore, Alan Davis had started at Warrior Magazine, bringing back a 50s character that was filling in the gap over in England for the people who loved Captain Marvel. And he was originally called Marvel Man. Marvel sued or threatened to sue, whatever. And they had to change the name from Marvel Man to Miracle Man, which I think was better. So Alan Moore starts this book, and you start hearing about it being dark, and it's coming out through an indie place called Eclipse. You can't really get a hold of those a lot if you don't live somewhere where there's a comic book shop. And if you did get to a comic book shop, they were sold out, But what Alan Moore did, now that we can look back on it in retrospect, before he was like the big superstar, it was stuff like this that made him a superstar. He was experimenting with comics. Like I said, it was unpredictable back then. And what he was doing is he asked the question, what if superheroes existed in the real world? Now, when you say ask that question and you and it's pertained to Alan Moore, everybody goes to Watchmen. Well, Marvel Man was the experiment. The Marvel Man, Miracle Man was the experiment. The place where it was sort of awkward and punk rock and unrefined, and it really did get better. And then Neil Gaiman came on and took over, and we never got to finish the story. Eclipse went out, and supposedly Marvel is getting finally on the ball. Mark Buckingham or someone has finished not just that last missing episode that people have been waiting for since like 1992 or something. But apparently there's 4 or 5 issues after that. Grain of salt, right? But when Marvel started putting this series out, they started recoloring and put it out once a month with the promise of by the time you get to issue like 25, you get that long-awaited Neil Gaiman story. And it never happened. And I really was concerned. I mean, we should have been excited, but I was really concerned because what had happened is Marvel Man, the myth, the legend, had grown over the years about how great it was. And when it came out, it was cutting edge. Okay. But the refined story of superheroes in the real world was Watchmen. That's, this was the experiment. This is what we learned. This is what works, what doesn't. And we had Watchmen. And so many things have been influenced by Miracleman and Watchmen. Kingdom Come, The Authority, anything that Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison, and them did, that it pretty much was probably going to be tamed by today's standards when this was cutting edge when it came out. So when everybody was all excited about it and stuff, I'm sitting over here like, oh man, don't get this, lower your expectations. The expectations had grown higher than what it should have been. And I think that's why we didn't have any kind of Miracleman mania that lasted as long as it was. The people who were there and the people that knew and the people that can get the mindset of the history of comics and what they did and everything like that. Because yes, people picked up Miracleman and they were a little bit underwhelmed. And that's exactly what I expected to happen. And I'm like, get a bunch of comic books from 1983, read a bunch of Marvel and DC books, and then pick up Miracleman. You know what I mean? I'm like, then you'll get it. Okay. If you see what the landscape was of comics at the time, and then you see what this was doing, then you'll get it. And I feel like a lot of that I think a lot of that applies to Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. You got to get into the mindset of when this book came out. There's 3 ways to read stories: the work itself, and thank goodness a lot of it does hold up, what was going on with the author, and what was going on with the world at the time, the historical reference of where they were at the time. And I think you do have to add all 3 of those to this work. Okay. But I'm finally getting around to finishing up the Neil Gaiman stories. Now, what is great about this, and I'm going to grab a book real quick. Excuse me. What is great about this is what I didn't expect. I thought this was going to be the Miracleman series proper. This is where Neil Gaiman came on. And this is where they decided that Alan Moore had built up, 15, 16 issues of what was going on with the world, having a superhero, somebody who has these powers in the world. Then he handed it over to Neil Gaiman. And that's where you find out that it wouldn't just be superheroics and a bad guy fighting a good guy. They got that out of the way, but it would change the world. I think this takes place 2 or 3 years after Alan Moore's last issue. And it's more about how it changed the world. Now, with Gaiman coming up, I'd already read maybe 1 issue of Sandman in 1988. I think it was issue 6. I think it's the one they're in the diner, the 24 hours horror story that sort of has kind of grown in legend with Sandman fans, right? But it was me getting to a comic book shop in Bristol and picking up this crossover event, Total Eclipse, through Eclipse Comics with Sienkiewicz covers. Marv Wolfman of still hot off of Crisis on Infinite Earth, taking all these indie characters that Eclipse had put out as an anniversary issue. And they were doing their form of Crisis on Infinite Earth. But there's a little short story in here of Neil Gaiman, by Neil Gaiman, of Miracleman. And it's all about a kid losing his virginity. You never see the girl he's in bed with. He's just lost his virginity. He rises up in the bed, got the sheet over his waist. He's still got the crusty mist on him from the sweat. If you get, he's still sweaty, and he's celebrating because he finally smoked a cigarette, and losing his virginity was one of the 3 greatest things that ever happened to him. And losing his virginity just almost topped meeting Miracleman, randomly and stuff, right? And as he's talking, you kind of get the idea there's been some screwed up stuff going in the world as he's talking about his childhood and what's going on in the world. It wasn't Sandman that had me be a Neil Gaiman fan. It was this little short story in the back of Total Eclipse number 4, a Gaiman story. And there for a little bit when Sandman really took off in the 90s, that this was kind of a hot book. It actually has been stolen from me. So I'm like, oh, and I know who did it, Oh, cutthroat business, man. Comics is a cutthroat business, man. Okay, here we go. The Neil Gaiman issue of Miracleman very rarely pop up around here, and when they do, they're expensive as hell. I have something like 7 issues I bought for $1 a piece of Neil Gaiman's first issue. I showed it a couple months ago, and I think it's on my Instagram if you dig through there. But yeah, they're super, when you find them, they're super expensive. I don't have as many issues of Miracleman as I thought, of the original run. Okay. Yeah, the Eclipse one. I follow you. I bought the online version of Miracleman, was so disappointed with the new colors. Ghastly. Yeah, I put it on Instagram last night, and on where I was talking about my reading material last night. The colors are very jarring for me, where I've seen the originals. All right, Alan Carnell, Movie World, and the Gray Man. What do we got here? Never thought Gaiman's take on it was this patch on Moors. I'm never thought Gaiman's take on it was a patch on Moors. I got you. Neil Gaiman was very inexperienced when it came to writing comics at the time. And maybe that's not the correct word. You know what I mean? But I think having to do a monthly book with Sandman and kind of keeping it on schedule, it's sort of like the Beatles effect. The Beatles actually didn't get good until they were playing in Germany every night at a bar. When somebody made them when they had to be out on stage, But what I read last night of this series, I know I've read bits and pieces. I've read an issue here and an issue there. I kind of like the rawness of it, and I wouldn't recommend it. I would never really recommend the Neil Gaiman issues of Miracleman to anybody. I would stick to the Moore stuff, especially the Red King story. I got them here somewhere. Here they are. Yeah, I got my trades all right here, handy dandy. So. Yeah, the Red King Syndrome and A Dream of Olympus, or whatever it is, like that. I would definitely recommend those. All right. So Victor Thomas has popped in here. How you doing, Victor? And then we have the only Miracleman comics I've read are the ones from the 50s when he was still called Marvel Man. That'd be interesting to read. Who is it? Michelangelo? Is that the guy's name that did them? Michelangelo. Okay. Now, the other thing that I got, and this is a little collection that I got from the library. And I got this specifically to see if I really wanted to order it and have it, right? But there's a guy named Charles Vess you may have heard of. This goes back to Gaiman also, man, with the Sandman stuff, right? There's apparently a theme today. But Charles Vess had been around since like the 70s. He did some stuff, I think, in heavy metal and some comics. He got a little bit of a buzz there when he popped in did some Spider-Man in the 80s and a graphic novel where they actually sent him to Scotland so he could do reference and sketches and stuff to do a Spider-Man story. He did some a pinup in the cover of Web of Spider-Man #1. It was really interesting. And then he did a Gaiman story, Will Shakespeare, Midsummer's Night Dream in Sandman. And that's where I really heard people talking about him. And lo and behold, this dude in 1990 or 91 actually moves to a place called Abingdon, Virginia. And I'm not giving away anything because it says in the book where he lives. Okay. So public knowledge, you know what I'm saying? And I got to meet him. And the first time I met him, it didn't go very well. I said something about a comic book artist, and he corrected me that he was a fantasy illustrator, and signed the book. And he really had an air about him. Now, over time, over age, over things that have happened personally with him and stuff, I've met him 2-3 times after that. And it's so wild. I could pop up in Abingdon like on a Sunday and decide that I'm going to pull in and go to this fantastic theater that they have there. And it's nothing to just start walking in and there goes Charles Vess walking by coming out of a movie, I've ran into him like that a little bit. And I've actually ended up picking up comics out of dollar bins around here. You draw a circle for Abingdon, Virginia into the Tennessee area. And it was nothing to find a Charles Vess signed comic book because he signed it. He went into Mount Empire Comic Books and he signed all the copies of Sandman 75 for the guy he's friends with that runs Mount Empire Comics. So there you go. There's a famous comic book artist less than an hour away from here and stuff like that, right? But anyway, he decided to do the indie thing. I still miss in the 80s when we called them alternative comics, but indie is what it is, right? So we got in the indie, and he pulled in a lot of guys that he'd and he started doing the Book of Ballads, these little self-published books that he put out there. And this is the collection. And he has people like Jeff Smith, Neil Gaiman. That's the two big guys, and they're doing this stuff. And this is him doing his fantasy stories and his witch stories. And he has a very distinctive style. Charles Vess is one of those guys that you see his stuff and you automatically know it's Charles Vess, right? So I'm reading through these, and they go up and down with quality of story, especially, like I said, since he has Jeff Smith doing some artwork in these also, I believe, or writing the story, or both. But this is a collection of all these little books that he did. And I have the first one that he did somewhere, and it cracked me up because when you open it up, he actually drew a little caricature of himself at his drawing board, freaking out, going, "What am I doing?" Like he couldn't believe he was self-publishing. It was a bigger deal back then. I guess there's, I guess with what was going on back then. But so far, I do kind of recommend this because the artwork is beautiful and it's pure, and you can just feel the joy that, or something, the comfort, the joy. There's a little extra something there where you can just feel this is like Charles Vess doing what he loves, I guess. Maybe I'm reading too much into it and stuff, but it has been, but Book of Ballads, I highly recommend that. What we got here? After Miracleman, get into Brat Pack and Max Immortal Comic Crack. All right, man. Now, what we're talking about is some Rick Vetch stuff here, right? Is what we're talking about. Still Alan Moore theme, because Rick Vetch has worked quite a bit on ABC Comics in 1963. Vetch has worked quite a bit with Alan Moore over the years, and what we're talking about are ventures of Rick Vetch putting out his stuff in indie books, right? I have Rick Vetch on Facebook, and he's letting you know quite a bit that you can get this book that he's doing, Max Immortal, through Amazon, and he also posts pages on there trying to get you to sell it. Sometimes they're before they come out, and sometimes they're when they're out, and then he'll explain to other places you can get the book. But Brat Pack that you're talking about, Vetch, Comic Crat, I definitely have always wanted to read it. But the feedback I've always gotten is that it's a very negative book and take on superheroes. The story I sort of heard is Rick Vetch kind of got screwed over, maybe by DC or something. And it was like, this was just like a brutal payback, or cathartic. He was being cathartic or something. I heard it was pretty brutal. So yes, I will check out Brat Pack. In Max Immortal, I do need to check it out because what I've seen on Facebook is amazing. You guys can throw some questions at me if you want. Like I said, I was expecting to go, for everybody that's popped in, I was expecting to go kayaking today, but we've had this huge snowstorm come in, and it started right before I did this live stream. So, and I'm also going on 3 hours sleep. I couldn't sleep last night. All right. Oh, that's very cool. This is hell of an artist. Awesome. Vetch also did some Ninja Turtles. Oh, that's why I love doing YouTube live streams and talking comics, is getting feedback like this, getting told things like this. We're all in this together, man. We talk about somebody, and then everybody's knowledge comes out, man. I will definitely be looking up some Vetch there. Brat Pack is great. Tim Merritt. Oh my God, there's a name from the past. What's up, brother? I haven't seen you on Facebook that much either, man. Great to see you out there. Hope you have a great day. You're doing your show as I go to work this morning. Hey, you be careful there, man. Yeah, awesome. I'll try to get back into being interesting here in a minute. Yeah, man, they're brutal stories. We're talking about Brat Pack. There's a new one called Boy Max Immortal that he's doing these days. Make sure you get the original Max Immortal series. Will do. All right. Okay, guys. Like I said, you can definitely. Tim Merritt's been busy. I believe it. I believe it. I'm going to go put your business out there. I think I followed a few things that went on. So let me scan the room, and we'll just randomly talk about something here. Oh, because I still have a few minutes, if you will. Yeah, and you guys can tell me a topic if you want, man. I'm just kind of looking here, man, because I can talk Miracleman all day and stuff. And I think I will. Now that I'm down to it, I think I'm going to keep talking about the theme that I had going on here today. All right. So if you're going to do YouTube, if you're going to talk comics, it's really hard not to be reactionary And like I said, I've done some venting on here over the years. I've read some absolutely shit comics and stuff like that, right? But I would love to be having the time. One thing is an issue of time, of course. You know, work, moving into the house, all the stuff that I've whined about and stuff like that, to do actual proper videos or do more live streams. But I got to have some material to do it with. And I don't want to do a channel that is nothing but like negativity. If you want to do YouTube and really kind of be big right now, you know, you got to do the speculation. You got to just destroy books. You've got to find a creator to like give a hard time in your videos. It's a really negative aspect to it, right? Really negative aspect. And I've seen some things that got borderline personal, you know, and it just makes me withdraw. You know, I'm not into negativity. I can handle a good vent sometimes. I can handle somebody actually talking about a comic being bad if they can say why. So there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so much stuff out there that you know, you really have to work to find the good stuff. And you know, somebody like, and then I'm not going to pull Crack into this. Don't get me wrong, Comic Crack here. You know, he's sitting here like, here's a good book to read, and here's another good book to read. So they're out there, and that's the problem. Is that not that there's great books out there? There still are. Is that it's hard to find them. You know, you really have to invest time that you don't have a lot of times to do that. So personally, on a personal note, oh, I got to get the price tag off of that. So on a personal note, one of the things that I try to be responsible about is trying to look at a new comic, something that's out there today, and try to judge it by today's standards and not compare it with books from the past, right? Things where they were like doing some rock and roll stuff back in the day with Miracleman, pushing the boundaries and really get into some complex stories and complex questions. A lot of things that Alan Moore did to make they answer the question, what would happen with a superhero if they lived in the real world, is that he started injecting everything with politics and sex and hedonism and the darker side of humanity, and how we all have our secrets and things, and how there's a kink and stuff. I mean, he really took, he not only dissected comics, but he also dissected the human condition and stuff. And he kind of took away the innocence of the comics and stuff, right? So you have like big strides and big concepts and very ambitious things going on in comics in the 80s and going into the 90s and stuff that had been building from the 70s from people like Steve Gerber and all the way back to like Stanley and, you know, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, where it was like the world outside your window. They were slowly kind of building up to this. So then all of a sudden you go from that to where I think one of the last Marvel books I really sit down and read all the way through was some SJW type hero jumping up on a college campus. And I just did not care. There was no motivation. This was not a superhero battle. This was not some deep questions or anything. This was like sort of catering to a younger audience or what they thought they had. And it really feels like if you go back and you read books like Scooter, Swinging with Scooter, certain books came out that in the Silver Age were these in romance comics, especially. I'm trying to think of a clip from a movie or a TV show, but I think we've all seen like some comedy on TV where they want to sit down and talk to the dad. Better Off Dead did it. Better Off Dead by John Cusack did it, man. But he came in and you see that the dad has this book and it's how to talk hip to your kids. And as they're sitting there trying to connect with them, they're like saying things like, well, I'm hip and that's groovy and it's cool, and put some insanity on that potato and stuff, right? And that's how a lot of these books come off to me, a bunch of older men trying to sit around and talk to the kids in their language, and it just comes off like that. You know, it's just awkward, it's not good, it's not real, and it's not even ironically funny and stuff, right? So then I remember reading about how some creators would say they would go to a mall and all they would do is just sit there, get a drink, keep their mouth shut, and listen to people talking, not to creepily eavesdrop on people, but they would do the research and try to listen to people to see how the kids talk to these days and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, they talk like people, you know, I'm like, you know, So it's kind of hard to have things that we can believe a man can fly. We have no problem believing bullets can bounce off of them. We have no problem believing a man can have an adamantium skeleton and start out at 5'2" and by the 90s end up being 6'2" and then be 6'4" in the movies. We have no problem with things like that. Because for some reason, when you write comics, there is still this grounding in the real world, if you will. There's not anything that really kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief that's ridiculous. And there's a whole lot of that in comics going on. And there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in these offices and coming down on why they make these stupid changes. So for me to do content on here, I look at Bleeding Cool sometimes. I look at CBR and I see some of the most stupid stuff going on out there that this is newsworthy. This is what you think it is. So it's a little bit of work. And the thing that you can do is you talk about the good stuff, the good comics, not because it was your era, not because it's nostalgia, not because of being a fanboy or something like that, but because the quality is there. You know what I mean? You can go back and look at Jack Kirby Commandy. And he did this innovative thing where every issue was a freaking movie, and it had three chapters in each one, and each one had a 2-page spread on there. And he did this for 3 years. Just fantastic, world building. You see this world through Commandy's eyes and stuff, man. And he made it look so effortless. There's that talent there, right? A lot of people can kind of roll their eyes because it was from 1973, and Jack Kirby had a few moments of dialogue that you're just sort of like, oh, you know what I mean? It has its flaws, right? But the energy, the technique, the speed, the storytelling is all there. And then people will climb all over you if you say anything negative too much about what's going on now, and say that they have some very bad things to say if you want to pull books and just kind of talk comics from the past and stuff, right? It's amazing, right? Oh my goodness, it's some good stuff. It's some good stuff. So yeah, for what I want to do on YouTube and what I want to talk about and stuff, it's kind of hard, man, to come up with stuff. I finally got a respectable deal of more Miracleman around from my local shop. Luckily, I had a bunch of 90 Superman toys I traded for the lot. There you go. There you go. That's how you need to get this stuff, man. You can't go wrong keeping up with Fantagraphics and what they're putting out. Interesting new stuff. This is what I'm saying. I have zero doubt that there is good stuff, man, but it is so hard to find. There are some good things that I'm getting, but I'll probably save that for another video that's coming up in the future here. I remember the days when Wolverine claws were longer than he was tall. Let me read that again, right? I remember the days when Wolverine's claws were longer than he was tall. That's hilarious. That may be the quote of the day. And we got Commandy is epic. All right, guys. Well, if you guys don't have any questions or anything, we've been on here for 47 minutes, 48 minutes coming up. And thanks for checking in, looking at my stuff, letting me talk, letting me vent, just talking about comics for a little bit. If you live somewhere where this snowstorm is hitting, man, be safe, eat a lot of food, and do all kinds of things. And do not be surprised if I don't pop up doing another stream a little bit later tonight or something, being snowed in, okay? If you're up for it. Whatever, if you want. So make sure you hit the bell just in case I do it. And if anybody wants to come on, or anybody wants to invite me somewhere a little bit later tonight or something like that, or I don't know, maybe the afternoon, feel free to send me a message through Instagram if you have me on there. Okay. And I'll let you know if I can do it, I can do it. I have a feeling I can hear the snow hitting the window. So I'm definitely not going anywhere today. Okay. All right. So be excellent to each other. Thanks for everybody that popped in. Great to see the legend, Woodward Crack, Chuck White, Gray Man, Tim Merritt popping up. Great. John, everybody out there, man. Later, guys.